Declassified. Operation Canvas. How the KGB flooded the West with fake masterpieces to crash the art economy. Introduction. The $100 million lie. New York City. Sotheby's Auction House. May 1982. The gavel fell with a crack that sounded like a gunshot. Sold for $45 million to the gentleman on the phone. The room erupted in applause. The painting, a newly discovered, lost Madonna by Raphael, was the most expensive piece of art ever sold at the time. It was a triumph of Western culture. It was validated by the world's top experts. It was analyzed by X-rays. It was perfect. There was just one problem. Raphael didn't paint it in Florence in 1505. A prisoner named Nikolai painted it in a windowless basement in Moscow in 1981. This is the story of Operation Canvas, a KGB plot so audacious it sounds like fiction. The Soviet Union didn't just want to steal Western secrets. They wanted to poison Western wealth. By flooding the market with undetectable fakes, they aimed to destroy the credibility of the gold standard of the elite economy, the art market, and cause a financial panic among the capitalist class. They had the motive, they had the science, and in a forgotten gulag, they found the only man on earth with the hands to pull it off. File number 01, The Prisoner with the Golden Hands. Subject, Nikolai I. Codename, Rembrandt. Occupation, art restorer. Forger. Status, forced labor. Nikolai was not a spy. He was a failed artist and a brilliant restorer working at the Hermitage Museum in Leningrad. His crime? He was caught painting improvements onto damaged 17th century icons to sell them on the black market. The sentence for defacing state property was death. The intervention. 1 hour before his scheduled execution, the door to his cell opened. A KGB general entered. He didn't offer a pardon. He offered a job. You can die today as a criminal, the general said, or you can live as the greatest painter of the Renaissance. You will paint for the glory of the state. But if you stop, your family will pay the price. Nikolai was moved to Object 14, a secret laboratory disguised as a warehouse outside Moscow. Inside, it was a time machine. The KGB had recreated a 16th century Italian studio. No electric lights, only candles, to ensure the brushstrokes matched the lighting of the era. No modern tools, no synthetic fabrics. Nikolai became a ghost. He spent 18 hours a day living as a man from 1500, enslaved by men from 1980. File number 02. The Science of Deception. How do you fool the world's top experts? You don't just paint a picture, you construct a lie, molecule by molecule. The KGB approached forgery not as art, but as chemistry. 1. The canvas problem. You cannot paint on modern canvas. Carbon dating will expose it instantly. The solution? Palimpsests. The KGB raided provincial museums for worthless 17th century paintings by unknown artists. Nikolai would carefully scrape off the original paint, leaving the 300-year-old canvas and the original gesso primer layer intact. Result: if a Western expert tested the canvas, it would date back to 1650. 2. The pigment problem. Modern paints contain synthetic polymers and machine-ground particles. The solution? The KGB geology department sourced raw lapis lazuli from Afghanistan for blue, malachite for green, and lead tin yellow. Nikolai had to hand-grind the stones using pestles from the 1500s. Even the binding oil was mixed with eggs from chickens fed a specific organic diet to avoid traces of modern pesticides in the yolk. 3. The aging process. The accelerator. This was the KGB's masterstroke. A fresh oil painting takes 50 years to harden fully and develop craquelure. The spiderweb cracks on the surface. The solution: the thermal cycler. The KGB built a specialized oven that cycled between extreme heat and freezing cold, while bombarding the canvas with UV radiation. In 48 hours, the painting aged 400 years. The varnish yellowed. The paint grew brittle. The cracks appeared naturally, random and chaotic, in a way that no needle could fake. File number 03, the economic warhead. Why go to this trouble? The goal wasn't just to make money, though the KGB needed hard currency. The goal was destabilization. The theory: Western billionaires, banks, and pension funds treat art as a store of value, like gold. If the KGB could prove that 20% of the masterpieces in the world were fake, the market would crash. Insurance companies would go bankrupt. Banks holding art as collateral would panic. The capitalist elite would lose billions in asset value overnight. It was inflation by forgery. They targeted the biggest names: Rembrandt, Da Vinci, Vermeer. They sold them through shell companies in Switzerland to unsuspecting oil tycoons in Texas and bankers in London. For 3 years, Nikolai produced 6 masterpieces. They were sold for a combined total of over $200 million in 1,980 seconds value. The money funded KGB black ops in Afghanistan and Angola. The art hung in the living rooms of the West's most powerful men. File number 04. The flaw in the perfection. Nikolai was a prisoner, but he was also an artist. And an artist has an ego. He hated that his genius was being credited to dead men. He hated that he was enslaving the world with lies. So, he decided to sign his work, not with a signature, but with chemistry. The sabotage. In 1983, Nikolai began working on his magnum opus, a lost portrait of St. John by El Greco. It was flawless. The brushwork was manic and elongated, perfectly mimicking El Greco's style. But in the deepest layer of the paint, the layer that would only be seen if a sample was taken and put under a high-powered electron microscope, Nikolai mixed in a single, microscopic grain of a modern substance: titanium white. Titanium white pigment was invented in 1921. It did not exist in El Greco's time. It was a time bomb. If anyone ever tested that specific square millimeter of the painting, the whole scheme would unravel. File number 05. The collapse. The El Greco was sold to a French investment bank. For 2 years, it hung in their lobby in Paris. But in 1985, the bank was being audited. An insurance adjuster, a young woman with a background in forensic chemistry, decided to do a deep core sample of the painting to justify the insurance premium. She took a needle-sized sample from the corner of St. John's robe. She put it under the spectrometer. She saw the spike. Titanium. The panic. The report was quietly sent to the French authorities. They alerted Interpol. The investigation didn't lead to Nikolai. He was a ghost. But it led to the shell company in Zurich. The art world froze. Rumors began to circulate that a super forger was active. Auctions were canceled. Prices for old masters dipped by 30% in 6 months. The KGB's plan had worked too well. The market was becoming too hot to sell into. The shutdown. Moscow pulled the plug. Operation Canvas was liquidated. The studio was burned. The remaining fakes were destroyed. And Nikolai? File number 06. The Vanishing. Siberia, 1986. The KGB could not let Nikolai live. He knew too much. Records show he was transferred from Object 14 to a corrective labor camp in the Arctic Circle. Official cause of death: pneumonia. But there is a legend among the old guard of the Russian intelligence community. They say that when the soldiers went to bury him, the body was wrong. The hands were too rough. The face was slightly different. Some believe that the general who recruited Nikolai had grown rich off the sales and, in a rare act of mercy or greed, hoping to use him later, let him go. There are rumors of an old man in a village in Argentina who paints icons for the local church. Icons that look suspiciously like they were painted by the hand of God himself. Conclusion: the Museum of Lies. The scary part of Operation Canvas isn't the 6 paintings we know about. It's the paintings we don't know about. Files suggest Nikolai painted at least 20 works. Only 4 were ever positively identified as fakes. That means 16 fake Renaissance masterpieces are still out there. They are likely hanging in prestigious museums in London, New York, and Paris. Thousands of tourists stare at them every day, moved to tears by their beauty. They are admired as the pinnacle of human history, but they are actually the legacy of a desperate prisoner in a Soviet basement, laughing at us from the grave. It forces us to ask the most dangerous question in the art world. If you can't tell the difference, does it matter if it's real?